Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some very surprising news this week. Patch 10.1 has an official release date already, and it's way sooner than anyone was guessing or expecting. It's even earlier than my early guesses. Getting the announcement out of nowhere was a total shock too, but I'm glad the dev team are managing to meet the crazy roadmap deadlines they set for themselves this year. But with this release being so early, it might actually cause more problems. So we're going to talk about that, as well as several updates for the live game, as well as some new updates for patch 10.1 coming this week, including lots of class changes and Mythic plus affix changes too. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's start with the release date, because I know this surprised a lot of folks, myself included. Patch 10.1 will release on May 2nd. They're actually giving us a solid date about a month in advance, which is very nice for all sorts of reasons, but I can't be alone when I said that my guild kind of freaked out at this news. Most early guesstimations were putting the release date at May 16th, and that was like, if they're ahead of schedule kind of thing, if they're blasting this patch out, which they definitely seem to be doing, but the general timeline was somewhere around the end of May, maybe even into the start of June if development was going kinda slowly. So seeing May 2nd was, and still is, kinda crazy. That really put Blizzard's new content delivery plan into perspective, and if this patch launch goes smoothly, well, I would no longer have any doubts that they can meet the roadmap goals for this year. Now, a potential big reason why this patch is arriving earlier than anticipated is probably Diablo 4. Diablo 4 launches on June 6th, so about 1 month after patch 10.1's release date of May 2nd, and while World of Warcraft and Diablo 4 might not have a crazy amount of overlap in terms of players, it's still not the best idea to cram two major releases side by side. So it does make a lot of sense for the dev team to give patch 10.1 some breathing room. The only question left was, how much? And it looks like 1 month seems to be about right. That's enough time for players to get through a good chunk of the story, hop into the raid, and the raid to World First will probably be reaching its end or close to it by that third week, and then Diablo 4 comes out for a nice change of pace. It feels about right, and I'm glad there is a good amount of space between the two releases because I plan to play the heck out of Diablo 4 when it comes out. I'm still just really surprised that this patch is coming out so soon. What's very interesting to me though is that this also means that patch 10.0.7 will only be relevant or really played through for 6 weeks total. That patch literally just went live and we're already moving on from it more or less, which I guess is fine. The patch did its job, it sets the stage for 10.1, the new story elements and plot points are there for us to follow, and it gave players an opportunity to get characters or alts caught up in gear, and with some new activities and gearing options to chase after. It was a fun little patch, but it still surprises me that Blizzard would put in the time and effort to create that new zone, the vault activity, all the rares and the primordial stones, for it only to be in the game for 6 weeks. If that's not dedication to providing consistent content, I don't know what is. But with patch 10.1 releasing so soon, there are a lot of concerns that some major problems might not have enough time to get resolved or addressed. One of the big ones is the new Mythic plus affixes. When these were first revealed, a lot of players weren't too happy with the prospect of having 3 new affixes that just seemed to be frustrating and annoying to deal with. With only 4 weeks left before the patch goes live, can these affixes get to a place where they're adding something meaningful to the Mythic Plus system without just adding frustration? Well, there are some big changes planned for all 3 affixes, as well as some other changes for explosive and how affixes are going to work in general. So to start with, Afflicted will have less health and its spawn behavior will be more consistent. The dev team feels okay with how Afflicted works for the most part, but the health was too high for healing them to really feel like a valid strategy, so easier to heal, but you'll probably still want to just dispel them when possible. For Incorporeal, the mobs are now immune to damage and should spawn more consistently. Being immune to damage should mean it will be easier to hard CC these mobs without that CC being broken too often by accident, and they're also discussing a change where Incorporeal mobs will despawn when you leave combat, which would be a very nice addition for sure. For Entangling, they just want to make it more obvious with visual and sound cues, but no major changes other than that. And then for explosive, they're going to reduce the health of explosive orbs to make killing them actually viable, but they're also considering a change to make the explosives apply a shield to mobs if they aren't killed on time, instead of dealing the massive AoE damage, which honestly sounds kind of awful, so I hope they don't go that route. So some changes, but I don't think these affixes will have enough time or iteration to get to a place where they feel less restrictive or annoying, but the main factor here is how the wider player base reacts to these affixes. If they end up being not a big deal, then I don't think we'll see many more changes to them, but if players absolutely hate these affixes when they get into the live game, then we will probably see changes happen much faster between weekly resets, so time will tell. The other major change potentially coming for affixes in Season 2 is when they will appear on your keys. Instead of being on key levels 4 and 7, the dev team are discussing moving the affixes way down the line, potentially coming in at key level 7 and then at key level 14. So you would only have tyrannical or fortified up to key level 7, and then you would see your second affix tacked on top there, but after that you would have to go all the way up to key level 14 to see that third affix. So this would make key level progression much easier and smoother because you have longer in-between periods where you can focus on the new difficulty of a higher keystone instead of dealing with the difficulty plus a new affix at the same time. I think level 14 is pretty high to wait for that third affix, but if it helps more players get into Mythic Plus and actually enjoy the pushing and the progress, then I think it would be a great change. At least they're looking at other ways of changing up Mythic Plus besides just adding new annoying affixes. Another major concern that a lot of raiders had specifically is whether or not they'll have enough time to get their cutting edge achievements. I know my guild has been working on Razagath for the last few weeks, and while they're making good progress, it's not like a kill is just inches away. 4 weeks is not a lot of progress time for a guild that only raids 6 hours a week, so it's going to be down to the wire like it is for many other guilds. Not a lot of guilds have killed Mythic Razagath when you compare it to previous end of raid bosses, and this is a pretty short tier when compared to the last few expansions. So it's understandable that folks will be worried that they put in all this time and effort, but they might not quite make the cutting edge timer. Well, if you're working on Raz, you can breathe a little easier. There are a lot of nerfs to Mythic Razzie this week. To start with, the boss's health was reduced by 5% on Mythic, so that already makes a big difference when it comes to pushing phases and meeting checks. The push effect was also nerfed by 5%, giving you a better chance of surviving that pesky change for Mythic difficulty, but there are some other huge nerfs for the intermission phases specifically. All adds health pretty much across the board was reduced by 15%, so you've been pushing through those intermissions quite a bit faster, which is great because they're also some of the more problematic areas to get through. All of these nerfs combined should make the boss much easier to deal with, and it actually led to a very quick kill for our guild, so a big congrats to them for cutting edge. There's even some time left over for some re-kills. I hope your guilds can make quick work of Mythic Razzie with these nerfs in place if you're close to your cutting edge achievements. So with those concerns more or less addressed, the next question has to be, well, will the patch actually be ready? It hasn't had that long of a PTR cycle, we're getting new features added to the PTR each week still, some things still don't work properly and are bugged or broken, and we're still seeing big changes to classes and tier sets, more of that in just a moment. There's also the topic of raid testing. We've only had a little bit of testing so far, and the raid testing schedule itself includes April 28th, where the last raid finder wing will be tested, so they're testing the raid the weekend before the patch is scheduled to go live. I don't really think you could cut it any closer than that. We kind of just have to hope that the bosses are in a good enough state during testing so that they don't need to make too many changes between the testing period and the raid going live. It is worth noting that the dev team are probably several builds ahead of us in-house, so what we see on the PTR is most likely always outdated, so a lot of the bugs that we see should already have been addressed. The raid also has an extra week to bake. The patch releases on May 2nd, but Season 2 starts on May 9th, so that gives them just a little bit of extra wiggle room, which they're definitely going to need. But honestly, this might have been one of the most far along patches we've seen on the PTR when it first went up, and from what I've tinkered about with, most of it works fine. The new zone is there, the tunnels to get to the new zone are there, the loading works fine, it doesn't really lag that much, the world bosses are in, rares are in, events are there, there's even a new community event to help researchers, the raid is in there, testing is chugging along, we don't have a new seasonal affix to worry about for Mythic Plus, but there have been affix changes and testing for dungeons. I have heard that there are about rough edges for certain dungeons being added into the Mythic Plus rotation, Vortex Pinnacle specifically, but that sounds like a bit of a tuning problem that will likely be addressed in week 1 of the patch if it's really bad when it goes live. So for the most part, the patch already feels quite complete on the PTR, when you consider that they're probably weeks ahead in terms of builds in-house, and we have 4 weeks left until the patch arrives. The patch could actually be fine, despite being somewhat early. I imagine the Diablo 4 launch gave them a very early indication that they needed to knock this patch out of the park, and they definitely seem to be succeeding in that regard. So yeah, it could be ready on time. One more indication we have of how a patch is shaping up are the class changes, and whether classes and tier sets specifically feel like they're in a good spot as we lead into the patch. You would hope that as we get closer to the patch's release date, we see less changes as things become more solid and set in stone. So let's take a look at this week's round of changes to see who's getting buffed and who's getting nerfed, and see where we all stand. To start with, Frost Death Knights will see a nerf to their 2-set bonus, taking the crit damage increase down to 10% from 15%. Havoc Demon Hunters are going to see a buff to their 4-set, increasing the damage bonus up to 8% from 5%. Guardian Druids are getting some new combat animations for specific bear form customizations, while Resto Druids will see some bug fixes, as well as a 4% nerf to Wild Growth to offset the bug fix. Evokers come soaring in this week with a huge round of changes, including some dev nodes. Thanks to feedback, they've made a lot of changes to Devastation's talents and have rearranged the bottom section significantly, and you have fewer 2-point nodes. It looks like they've been listening and iterating on feedback, which is great to see. So Causality was redesigned again, reducing cooldowns whenever Disintegrate deals damage or based upon the targets hit by Pyre. It also no longer is a choice node. Font of Magic has been buffed, Feed the Flames has been redesigned to cause Pyre to explode into a firestorm after 12 Pyre casts, Imminent Destruction was redesigned as well, giving you more reasons to use Deep Breath, Lay Waste was buffed and is only a 1-rank talent, Burnout, Scintillation and Power Swell are also only 1-rank talents now at a full value of the previous rank 2 power. There are some new talents thrown into the mix, and then Raging Inferno has been nerfed towards the bottom. All in all, some very interesting changes that make me want to give Evoker another shot in this patch. Moving on to the Hunters, Revive Pet will see some important changes. It's going to be a 2.5 second cast, down from 3 seconds, and will no longer be interruptible. For Survival specifically, their Vault of the Incarnate's 2-set and 4-set bonuses are getting nerfed quite significantly, but they will receive an 8% damage buff to compensate, just to make sure the Survival Hunters aren't holding on to their old set bonuses for too long. For the Monks, there are some bug fixes and tooltip updates, nothing too exciting I'm afraid. For the Paladins, more tooltip fixes and UI changes to better support spells, as well as some bug fixes. Priests will see even more changes to their new set bonuses. Disc 2-set and 4-set have been redesigned again to improve the efficacy of Shadow Word Pain and Power Word Radiance, but the 4-set also gives you a chance to proc a free, instant Power Word Radiance that can hold up to 2 charges and increase the duration of Atonement from Radiance by 3 seconds. That's actually huge and will make Disc Priest ramp faster, last longer, and you can even do some of it while moving. That is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on for raiding in particular. Holy Priest 2-set and 4-set have also been redesigned to buff Prayer of Mending in a few different ways, while also giving you a chance to have more mendings out at any given time, and then Shadow Priest will see a 10% damage boost on Shadow Word Death, a 30% nerf to Idol of Cthulhu's Mind Flay and Mind Seer damage, a change to how Distorted Reality works, and a nerf to Auspicious Spirit's potential insanity generation. The Shamans are up next, and it's just a small one I'm afraid. Deeply Rooted Elements should activate more consistently for all specs. I feel like we've heard that exact change at least once before, but here it is again. For the Warlocks, Destruction 4-set has been redesigned again to give you a stacking fire damage increase. And then last but not least, we come to the Warriors. For arms, Fatal Mark will last for 1 minute longer, Bloodletting will also cause Mortal Strike to apply Rend to targets below 35% health if you have Rend talented, and the 4-set has been redesigned to give you a cleave component on Mortal Strike as well as a stacking damage buff. And then Fury hasn't been left out entirely, their 4-set has been adjusted to give your next Bloodthirst 10% increased crit chance, 25% extra damage, and generate 2 additional rage, stacking up to 10 times. That's it for this week's class changes. Now remember that we do have several weeks left of potential balance tuning, and week 1 of the new season is always full of balance tuning and class changes as well. So even if your class goes into the patch a little underpowered or even overpowered, that doesn't set the stage for the entire patch. So it's been a busy week, and I'm sure things will only get busier from now until May 2nd. We'll be sure to keep you in the loop with all of the updates, but that's it for this video. How do you feel about patch 10.1 releasing on May 2nd? Is that too early? Is that maybe too late? Or do you think it's just about right? How much do you think the Diablo 4 release date impacted 10.1's release schedule, and what do you think of the proposed affix changes? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I'll see you next time.